Hey, what's going on guys? My name is EndingGamertag and I'm back for your daily Fortnite video. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys the best controller settings for Fortnite Battle Royale. Now, if you guys go in to enjoy today's video, a like would be very much appreciated. On the contrary, if you genuinely dislike today's video, then feel free to leave a dislike. Also, if you're new around here and would like to see more daily Fortnite content like this in the future, then feel free to subscribe as well as turning on those post notifications. Without the way, let's hop right into this. Again, I mentioned we're going to be talking about the best controller settings for Fortnite Battle Royale. So whether you play on a console like Xbox One, PS4, or even Nintendo Switch, or if you just simply play with a controller on PC, this video will benefit you. What I did to actually find what I consider to be the best controller settings is I actually compiled all of these settings that I've taken from my other videos where I talked about Phase Jarvis' settings, Phase Sway settings, I did Razor X settings as well. And I kind of compiled at least what I consider to be the best part or best aspects of each player's settings, and then I implemented those really important and crucial parts into my own personal settings and kind of tweaked things that I felt like needed to be tweaked. So if you like to replicate my settings, feel free to do so. Again, this is like aspects taken from all types of different really good controller players for Fortnite, so I definitely would say that this is probably one of the best settings you'll ever see. So first of all, hopping into this, we're going to start with the sensitivity settings, starting with X and Y. Now I have my X and Y sensitivity settings set to a 0.712, both of them actually. Now the reason I have mine at a 0.712, I prefer to keep my XY sensitivity around a 0.7, whether it dips down into like a 0.68 or it goes up to like a 0.72. This is just the general area in which I like to keep it at. A lot of the players that I covered, again like Jarvis, Sway, Razor X, who you can check out all their videos on my channel of all their settings, they keep theirs around this. Razor X himself actually keeps his very high, but the other two players are around this area. So again, I recommend you keep it anywhere from like a 0.68 at lowest to a 0.72 or 0.73 at most. And again, a 0.712 just simply falls right in between that. It's also worth mentioning that the X and Y sensitivity settings is going to kind of affect your shotgun and SMG aim, because X and Y sensitivity is basically just for free aiming, so when you're not aimed down sights with a weapon or you have like a pickaxe out. So that's X and Y sensitivity, definitely one of the most crucial. Now going on to the controller targeting sensitivity, and I have mine at a 0.300. I used to have it a little bit higher, but this is just around the general area I like to keep it at. A 0.3 is what I'd recommend. And if you have the setting too high, it really does create a lot of complications. A lot of people, including myself at one point, I used to have it at a 0.330, which is barely higher than this. However, I thought that was the best setting, and then I lowered it and realized that this is actually even better than that. I now hit a lot more of my shots and my overall accuracy has improved. So whatever your setting is for your targeting sensitivity, if you feel like you're very comfortable with it, just lower it half a decimal place or a full decimal place, and I almost guarantee you'll immediately see an improvement in accuracy. And again, I strongly recommend it. So 0.30 is definitely a starting point that I'd recommend. You can raise it and lower it to your own needs. Next is going to be the scope sensitivity, and I have this at a 0.567. This is kind of related to targeting sensitivity and just the fact that I prefer to keep it around here. I don't want it to be too high because it doesn't need to be as high as I might think. However, we definitely don't want it too low to the point we can't keep up with players. And I don't really change the setting often because it isn't that important, as you're not typically aimed down with scoped in games. I believe the only weapons now that have scopes on them is snipers, scoped ARs, and the proximity grenade launcher, which again, we're not using that consistently. Next is my controller building sensitivity, and I have it at a 1.980, so almost maxed out at a 2.000. And I know a lot of people want to have their building sensitivity extremely high. So here's what I can recommend. If you want to raise it this high, don't immediately jump from like a 1.3 all the way to this high, because it'll be so out of control and you will be literally building terribly, panic building, misplacing everything, and it's definitely not what we want to do. So the way you can raise your building sensitivity at a very consistent rate is, first of all, take it from what it is right now, and once you're very comfortable with that setting, raise it a decimal place. So if you have it at a 1.3, then raise it to 1.4. And then obviously once you're comfortable with that, after maybe a couple, 2 to 3 games even, raise it to 1.5, so on and so forth, and continue doing this. And eventually you'll probably like plateau or peak, and my peak was at like a 1.975. However, I've now raised it to a 1.98, and this has just been suiting all of my needs. I'm able to build consistently and at a decent rate and not misplace that often, and I'm also able to build as fast as I'd like. So that's my building sensitivity, again, of 1.980. Now my edit mode sensitivity is at a 1.417. It doesn't need to end in a 7, but just around this area is what I recommend, like a 1.4 or a 1.5. And this might surprise a lot of you guys. My old sensitivity settings for edit mode, at least, used to always be like a 2.000 or 1.9, almost maxed out, and I would always talk about how this is really what you want to have your edit mode sensitivity at. This way we can make quick and snappy edits. However, making these setting videos over other amazing players, I realized something that is very important, and that is dead zone settings and how much it affects editing, building, and everything along those lines. So we lowered our edit mode sensitivity from a 2.000, which is maxed out, to about a 1.4 or 1.5. And as I talk about dead zones, I'll get more into that, but I promise you, it is so important. Now we're going to talk about just a couple miscellaneous settings I recommend you have changed from the default. So first of all, sprint by default. Every single player should have this on, and I cannot stress that enough. The reason being is because you should always be sprinting in Fortnite. There's never a time you shouldn't be sprinting unless you're crouching. And as we all know, when you're crouching in Fortnite, sprint by default is not in effect. Also, it frees up a free button for us to bind in action to in our keybinds, which is going to be L3 or the left analog stick clicked in, which is a very important button. Next is tap to search or interact. I recommend everyone have this on. It just allows us to open chests and ammo boxes simply by pressing the button once, or tapping it rather, instead of having to hold it the entire way through. Lastly, the setting I recommend you have off is edit mode aim assist, which I believe is on by default. The reason I have a problem with edit mode aim assist is because the game kind of predicts what edit you're about to do, so it pulls your cursor or crosshair away from really the edits you're trying to make, and it just creates so many complications. So turning off edit mode aim assist really is something I strongly recommend. Lastly, we're going to talk about brightness, and then we're going to hop into what you guys are probably here for, which is going to be keybinds and then dead zones. So my brightness is set to a 0.80, which is higher than the default value of a 0.50. And the reason I have it raised, which I talk about in all my videos where I do settings, is because if you're in a dark area, like a room where someone's like hiding in a shaded area, or if you're down in Dusty Divot where trees are casting over, you guys get the point. Basically, it's kind of difficult to see players that use dark skins, such as the Black Knight or any skin that has a dark outfit on. It just makes it a little bit more difficult when that really shouldn't be that difficult to see them. Now, obviously, it's not impossible to see them by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. It's still very easy to see them. However, raising our brightness, even by the littlest amount, honestly, does allow us to see things like that a little bit more. It just allows player models to stand out better, and gives us a better visual and view of everything. This is more of like a competitive aspect, but nonetheless, it still will help you in the end. Now going on to keybinds. Again, everyone's always wondering what keybinds I use, what keybinds other players use. And to my surprise, actually a lot of the really good pro players that I talked about or covered use similar keybinds. So first of all, I use a custom builder pro, which I recommend everyone use. And the only keybind changes I've made is my edit is binded to Y, which would be triangle for PS4, and then my toggle pickaxe is binded to L3, which is the left analog stick clicked in. And that's honestly all of the keybind changes I have made. And the reason I actually have it binded to Y, which would be triangle for PS4, is because I wanted an instant edit button desperately. And the reason is because obviously the default edit button for console or controller Fortnite is the same button as switch modes, which is basically bringing out your blueprints to build. So you'd have to hold B or circle to bring out an edit, and sometimes instead of editing, it'll bring out your blueprints where you're building, and then vice versa. It just was so difficult and wasn't instant edits, obviously. You'd have to hold the button. So I figured Y would be a pretty good substitute. I simply just tap Y and I'm able to edit for instant edits. And then obviously Y is the button that's binded for toggling pickaxe, meaning going from anything in your inventory over to your pickaxe and back. So I figured I would use L3, which is the left analog stick clicked in for toggle pickaxe, because my finger or my thumb is already resting there. So of course, that is why sprint by default is on, because it gives us a free button to bind to anything. And then for people wondering what my confirm button is, I usually keep it at B, which would be circle for PS4. However, sometimes I'll switch it to L2 or left trigger, but typically I keep it at B. Next is going to be the dead zones, and this is so important. First of all, my left analog stick is set to a 0.20, which is the default value. I've not changed this one bit. But my right analog stick, which is very important. The reason right analog stick is way more important than the left analog stick is because this is where everything really happens. Left analog stick only affects movement, whereas the right analog stick, I'm saying analog stick so much, basically controls everything. It controls your accuracy with aiming, it controls your building, your editing, so on and so forth. So first of all, my dead zone setting is set to a 0.09. I used to have it at a 0.20, but again, as I went and talked about the other extremely good controller players, I realized theirs was at like a 0.07 or a 0.05, so I figured I should be lowering it to see how this affects anything. Honestly, this has done unbelievable wonders. It's unbelievable how much this has affected and improved my overall quality of my performance in the game. I'm able to make really snappy edits. Don't get me wrong, I don't have great edits by any means, however it has improved my edits overall. Again, I talked about my edit mode sensitivity setting, I actually changed it and lowered it quite a bit. However, lowering my dead zone as well has made them a lot more faster and honestly a lot more consistent than what they were when I had a high edit mode sensitivity. So again, this just allows for so much better, faster, and more snappy, I guess you could say, edits, where it looks a little bit more like it's on PC than it is on console. Obviously, I'm not that great at editing. Also, it has affected my overall accuracy quite a ton, where I'm able to have flick shots, I'm able to snap onto players as they're running and so on and so forth. It's also made it a lot easier for my building, where I have to do pretty much less effort to do the same speed of builds, if not faster. So that's why dead zones are so important. I strongly recommend you guys replicate my dead zone settings, because I promise you'll see an immediate improvement. So that again is all for today's video for my settings. If you'd like to optimize your own, which I forgot to mention when I talked about sensitivity, basically for sensitivity settings, which is really what you should be optimizing for yourself, is you want to keep it at what it is right now and lower it for every sensitivity setting and see if that actually improves your performance overall. If it doesn't, then raise it, then that should help. Obviously go back and forth, lowering and raising your sensitivity settings, and eventually you'll find your sweet spot. This is what I did to find these perfect settings for myself, and I recommend of course you do this to find your own perfect settings as well. Of course, my own settings, if you like to replicate them, is a very good starting point, I'd say. So again, that's it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, a like would be very much appreciated. On the contrary, if you genuinely disliked today's video, then feel free to leave a dislike. Also, if you're new around here and would like to see more daily Fortnite content like this in the future, then feel free to subscribe as well as turning on those post notifications. Anyways, my name is EndingGamertag. Thank you all for watching today's video, and I'll see you tomorrow. Adios.